They called me a legend. I stood backstage at the Apollo Theater while the final crowd of my life chanted my name, but I could feel it. The applause wasn't for me. Not really. The air was heavy with lights that had seen too many dreams and a silence that felt older than the wood beneath my shoes. I moved slow, not because of the cane in my hand, but because I knew what was waiting at the end of that walk. A reckoning. A whisper I'd buried for over 50 years. My name is Moses Ray, at least it used to be. Now the world knows me as Jackson Saint, soul singer, legend, icon, myth, the voice that brought the blues back, the man who made pain elegant, the man who never missed. But before the awards, before the stadiums, before the suits, tailored by ghosts and publicists with teeth sharper than preachers, there was just me, a black man with a guitar, a bruised heart, and a voice nobody wanted to hear. Back then, I played the Beale Street backwaters, half-lit bars with fried grease in the air, and plastic chairs that stuck to the backs of your legs in summer. I had songs that could pull the breath from your chest, but they only pulled silence from the room. Memphis, 1973. The bar was called The Shrike. A shotgun hallway of a place no bigger than a trailer home, filled with cigarette ghosts and too many men hiding from their wives and their own reflection. I played on a busted platform with one speaker and a mic that shocked your lip if your sweat dripped the wrong way. I wasn't just singing, I was testifying. The kind of songs that carried the ache of Sundays and the smell of Mama's kitchen just before she told you she was tired of praying. But they didn't clap. Not really. A few nods, a head bob, a waitress chewing gum too loud. I watched a white boy who couldn't even sing in tune cover one of my songs on the corner 2 nights later and get tipped $100 in a single hour. That kind of thing will split you down the center if you let it. You're too real, my drummer told me once, cleaning his trumpet mouthpiece like it was a relic. You gotta water it down, make it sweet. People want a taste of blackness, not the full meal. I knew he was right, but I didn't have anything else to give. I lived in a one-room apartment on Vance Avenue above a pawn shop that sometimes sold my own gear back to me at a markup. The bathroom faucet ran red sometimes, and I had to smack the heater like it owed me rent. But it was mine. There was an old woman who lived across the hall, Miss Thelma. She used to play Mahalia Jackson records so loud they came through the walls. And sometimes I'd press my ear against the sheetrock and pretend I was in church again, safe in the sound of something bigger than disappointment. She told me once, "Moses, don't let the world fool you. A lie dressed in silk still burns like the devil when you sleep in it long enough." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but her eyes always looked like they were waiting for someone to come back who never did. That year I sent demos to every label I could find. Sun Records, Stax, Atlantic, even little independents with names like Crescent Moon Sounds and Holy Ghost Vinyl. I'd print out my bio on that cheap typewriter ribbon and send cassette tapes wrapped in brown envelopes. I'd wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then I'd get the same letter every time. "Thank you for your submission. While we respect your artistry, we're not looking for this sound at the moment. This sound meant this skin. I knew it, and they did too." One night after a gig where the only person who clapped was the bartender, and I'm not sure he wasn't just killing a mosquito, I packed up my gear and walked out into the night. The streets were empty. The city sleeping like a man who knew he was running out of time. I wasn't trying to go anywhere in particular. I just wanted to walk long enough to outrun the voice in my head that said, "You should have quit 5 years ago. You should have picked a trade. You should have been born someone else." My feet took me past storefronts and broken payphones, past the theater where I once saw B.B. King live for $5, past a church where I learned harmony from a woman with a cracked voice and a heart made of armor. And then I was there, A street corner I didn't recognize. 4 roads stretching in 4 directions, but not a single car, light, or sound. Just me and him. He leaned against the street sign like he'd been carved from the night itself. Black suit, black hat, tie knotted just right. His shoes gleamed like mirrors. He didn't speak right away, just nodded like we were old friends who didn't need small talk to recognize each other. "What's this place?" I asked, stepping into the center of the intersection. "I've been all over Memphis. I ain't never seen this corner before." He tilted his head and smiled. "Maybe it just showed up for you tonight." His voice was warm, smooth, but not soft. It had weight, like it came from deep in the earth. I should have been scared, but I wasn't. Somehow I knew this man wasn't here to hurt me. He was here to offer me something, and I was already too tired to run. He pushed off the pole and stepped toward me. Up close, his skin shimmered, not glowing, but changing subtly under the streetlight. 1 second smooth brown, the next pale like porcelain, then dark again, almost like he was wearing all faces at once. "You got a voice," he said, "one that could move mountains, could stir the dead awake. But the world won't listen, will it?" I shook my head. "They'd rather hear your sound from somebody else," he continued, "somebody easier to swallow, somebody who don't remind them of what they did." He took a long, deliberate breath and let the silence hang. Then he pulled something from his coat, a slide, the kind blues guitarists use, silver, polished. It shimmered unnaturally, even in the weak light. "Use this," he said, handing it to me. "Tonight, just once. Play like you always do, but mean it like your life depends on it." I stared at the slide. It was warm in my hand. Felt like it had a pulse. "And if I do," I asked, "then the world will hear you. What's the price?" He smiled again. This time there was no kindness in it. "They won't see you." "What do you mean?" "They'll see someone else. Still you, but different, more digestible. You'll sound the same, feel the same, but when they look at you, you'll be what they want to love." I looked up and down the empty street. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when something's watching, waiting. "Why me?" I asked. "'Cause you already gave them everything, and they still wouldn't clap." He didn't wait for my answer, just turned and began walking down one of the roads, disappearing into the shadows like smoke. The slide pulsed once in my palm, a heartbeat or a warning. I closed my fingers around it, didn't speak, just walked home. That night I took my guitar out of his case like it was a ritual, tuned it slowly, lit a candle, though I didn't know why. Maybe I needed it to feel holy. Maybe I needed to feel like I was doing something that mattered. I slipped the slide over my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. When I strummed the first note, the room changed. The sound echoed too long, like I was playing in a canyon instead of a crumbling apartment. The candle flickered violently. I felt something move through my chest, deep and slow, like grief being born again. I played, and I didn't stop. Not for minutes, not for hours. I don't remember sleeping. I just remember waking up to a new world. The next day I played at the Shrike again. Same crowd, same room, same set list. But the moment I stepped on stage, people turned. Eyes wide, phones out, voices whispering. And when I sang, really sang, they gasped. Their faces were stunned, open, soft. One woman cried during my second verse. A man dropped his beer. A group of tourists near the door started filming immediately. And that's when I noticed it. I caught my reflection in the metal side of the speaker. And I didn't recognize the man looking back. He had blue eyes, a thinner face, pale skin. My voice, but not my body. I touched my cheek. It felt the same. But when I turned to the crowd again, I saw it clearly. They weren't reacting to Moses Ray. They were reacting to whoever they thought I was now. After the set, a man in a tight black t-shirt approached me. He said his name was Travis. He worked with people who matter. He told me he could get me studio time, interviews, exposure. Said he'd never heard anything so fresh, so soulful, so pure. He said it's like Ray Charles, but for this generation. People need that, but clean, fresh, marketable. He never asked where I was from, never asked who taught me to sing, just wanted me in the studio that week. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Within a month, I had a new name, Jackson Saint. It was cleaner, they said. Memorable. Tested well. They cut my afro into a sharp pompadour and put me in suits 3 times more expensive than my rent had ever been. Taught me how to smile like I wasn't watching myself disappear. They played my first single on the radio every hour, a Moses Ray song. But they didn't know that. They called it an instant classic. A white DJ on a soul station in New York said, "Jackson Saint sings like a black angel with a broken heart." He meant it as a compliment. I felt my stomach turn. The thing about fame is, it doesn't whisper, it shouts. When the single dropped, that old Moses Ray ballad, they repackaged under a glossy name. The world lost its mind. Soul stations called it the return of feeling. Critics praised its honesty, its roots. They said Jackson Saint was the real thing. They said I was a miracle. I got invited to play the BET Soul Sessions 2 weeks later. The set was simple: stool, guitar, single spotlight. The same setup I used at the Shrike, but now there were velvet ropes and interns with clipboards pacing backstage. I opened with a song I wrote when I was living above that busted pawn shop. A slow waltz about my mama's hands, rough from washing the same grief over and over. The audience, mostly black, mostly tired of lies, melted. They didn't just listen, they leaned in. Grown men wept. A woman in the front row shouted, "That's church." Another whispered, "That's home." And in that moment, I almost believed it was real. Almost. When I walked off stage, one of the producers pulled me aside. "You're the future," she said. "You remind us who we are." I wanted to tell her, "I'm not reminding you, I am you." But I just smiled and thanked her. Because I knew she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the skin I wore. That year, I won 3 BT Awards. Best New Artist, Best R&B/Soul Performance, Viewer's Choice. I gave quiet, humble speeches and talked about honoring the legacy. Talked about the voices that came before. Never said my name, not once, nobody noticed. They put me on the cover of Essence, billed me as the new king of soul. I performed at Essence Fest with an all-black band behind me, every one of them a better musician than I was. But I was the face, the image, the story. An old woman backstage that night grabbed my hand with both of hers. Her fingers were swollen with time. She said, "You got a gift. You got what the old ones had. You don't just sing, you carry it." I wanted to ask her if she remembered Moses Ray, if she'd ever heard of him, but I already knew the answer. Then came the Apollo, the place where legends begin or end. I stood in the same spot where Sam Cooke once spun pain into silk, where James Brown once made knees buckle from groove alone. The crowd was electric, packed shoulder to shoulder, mostly black, dressed like Sunday. They screamed my name before I even played the first chord. Jackson Saint's savior of soul, the white boy who could really sing. That night I played a song I wrote for my father, a man who taught me silence by example. It was a Moses Ray original, never recorded, never shared, but that audience treated it like a gift from God himself. Some held their hands up like they were at a revival. Some rocked side to side, eyes closed, mouthing the words they didn't know. After the show, someone handed me a crown. Literally, a gold leaf wreath like I was Caesar. That should have felt like the moment. It didn't. What do you do when even the people who look like you can't see you? I remember one interview. The host was a black woman with a halo of natural hair and a voice like velvet thunder. She said, "Jackson, you're doing what the others try to do but can't. You channel pain without making it political. You bring gospel without preaching. You give us blackness, but clean." She meant it as praise, and I smiled like I wasn't dying inside. I saw an article online. "Is Jackson Saint the greatest soul singer since Marvin?" And the top comment read, "Finally, someone who brings that sound without all the baggage." I knew what baggage meant. It meant skin. It meant struggle. It meant the reminder that pain had a source. I began to disappear in increments. At first it was just in mirrors, I'd look and not quite see myself, as if there was a film between me and the glass. Then it was in conversations. Friends from before stopped calling. The band I used to rehearse with at 3 a.m. got replaced by session musicians who said things like vibe management. And then finally it was in memory. My old name, Moses Ray, started to fade like a smudge on a window. I stopped dreaming in my own voice. Stopped hearing my mama's hum in the back of my head. I had become the story they wanted, and I had written myself out of it. One night, scrolling through social media in a hotel room in London, I saw a young black boy covering one of my songs. He couldn't have been older than 16. He sang barefoot, standing in his bedroom, eyes closed like the world was too loud to face. He sounded like me, but the comments tore him apart. Why he trying to sound white? Keep that fake soul to Jackson, sounding like a bootleg saint. He was just trying to sound like me, but the world thought I was someone else. I clicked off the video and sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, I went to the closet, dug through the false leather of my wardrobe, past the silks, past the glittering stage jackets. At the bottom was a small wooden box I hadn't opened in years. The silver slide lay inside, tarnished now, dull. I picked it up, put it on, strummed a chord, nothing, not even a hum. It was the night of the Legends Gala, a celebration of living icons. I was the youngest ever inducted. Red carpet, gold-trimmed invitations, and tributes from people I used to study in the shadows. Patti LaBelle kissed my cheek. Stevie Wonder called me The Bridge. The whole thing was televised, national audience, prime time. They gave me 12 minutes to perform whatever I wanted, 12 minutes to show the world who I was. The producer called it a coronation. I wore a white velvet suit, custom. Everything felt too bright. They asked if I needed a teleprompter. I said no, but I was lying. I needed a map, a compass, a miracle. Backstage, I paced like an animal in a cage. Every step echoed with that comment from the interview. If you were just another black singer, no one would be calling you a genius. I thought about that kid, the one who sang like me and got called a fraud. I thought about Moses Ray, the man who bled for every lyric and got laughed off stage. And I thought about the price I'd paid to be free. When the lights dimmed and they announced my name, the applause came like thunder. I walked out slowly the way the greats used to, let the silence breathe before I played. I sat on the stool, cradled the guitar, and froze. I looked out at the crowd. Dozens of black faces, artists, activists, journalists, teachers, people who fought to be heard in a country built to ignore them. And I realized something. They were cheering for the mask, not the music, not the truth, just the mask. I strummed a chord, my hands shook, then another chord, still no words. I looked up at the screen behind me. They'd put together a video montage of my journey. Clips of White Jackson Saint on late night shows, magazine covers, sold out arenas. Not a single image of Moses Ray. Not a single note from the life before. The sound tech whispered through the in-ear monitor. "You okay, boss?" I pulled it out, dropped it on the floor. The audience murmured. And then I spoke. Not into the mic, not for the cameras, but like I was back at the Shrike, talking to a half-empty room. I said, there used to be a man named Moses Ray, played guitar like it was church, sang like pain was the only language worth learning. Nobody listened to him, nobody clapped. The room went quiet. I continued. He died the night Jackson Saint was born. But tonight, I'm gonna sing something he wrote. I played the song Nobody Bought. 3 verses, no chorus, it's just truth, raw, crooked, full of holes. I sang it as myself, not the polished photogenic version, and for the first time in years, my voice cracked, not out of weakness, out of freedom. When it ended, there was no applause, and just silence, and then one person stood, then another, and another, until the entire room, the same room that had never seen Moses Ray, rose to their feet. Not for Jackson Saint, for me. But even as they clapped, I knew it was too late. I had built my house on borrowed bones. The face they loved wasn't mine. The praise had already been spent. The man I could have been, I buried him. This was just the funeral. The dressing room was quieter now than it had ever been. No handlers, no makeup artists, no label reps, just me. A wrinkled suit on a wire hanger, a single mirror that told the truth. I was 78 years old. My hands didn't move the same. My voice had sand in it now, but the applause hadn't faded. If anything, it had gotten louder. They called me the last great soul man. Said I made white folks feel black pain without guilt. Said I made black folks feel seen, even if they didn't recognize the man doing the singing. I used to tell myself I did it for the culture, that I was sneaking truth into rooms that wouldn't have listened otherwise. But now I knew better. I did it because I was tired of being ignored. I let the world rewrite me. And after a while, I forgot the original script. The cane leaned against the wall. My old guitar sat in the case beside it, the same one I used that night at the Legends Gala. That night, people started to ask questions, but the questions came too late. Back then, I'd hoped something would shift, that I could walk away from the myth, reclaim the name, return to the man I was. But the industry doesn't release its ghosts. Jackson Saint became a machine. The suits, the tours, the brand deals, they didn't care who was inside the shell. And I just kept singing. The Apollo stage waited behind the curtain. They'd sold it as a farewell performance. What they didn't say was that it was really a eulogy. As I walked toward the light, I thought about all the people I had been. The boy humming in the church balcony. The man gripping his demo tape like it was holy. The singer at the crossroads, desperate enough to sign silence into song. And I wondered, what would have happened if I'd just stayed Moses? Would I have faded into obscurity? Would I have lived poor but proud? Would my songs have died with me, never heard but fully mine? I didn't know. I never would. The stage was dark. I stepped out alone. The crowd stood before me, hushed. Some still wore t-shirts with my face on them. Not my face, the one the world loved. I sat on the stool, held the guitar one last time. My fingers shook, not from age, from memory. I didn't speak, didn't explain. I just played a new song, not written for them and not for the charts, not for the label, not for the fans, just for the boy who never got heard, the man who had a voice before they told him what to sound like. When I sang, it wasn't perfect. My pitch bent in places, my phrasing broke like tired bones, but it was mine. Every note, every breath. No ovation came at the end, no encore, just stillness. And then, one person stood. She was old, older than me maybe, wearing a shawl and holding a cane like it was a staff. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "Welcome back, Moses." I smiled. For the first time in decades, I heard my name, and it didn't echo. It landed. That was the last time I sang on stage. I didn't need another. I had finally returned, not to fame and not to legacy, but to myself.